Welcome to the Inspiring Victory Show, where we help you double your business, double your impact, and change the world. This is going to be one of those episodes that you will thank me later for having watched, because one of my favorite humans in the entire world is on this show, and that is Tim Van Mieghem of ProAction Group. He has an extraordinary company that he and Doug, his fabulous partner, have built over many, many, many years. They do exceptional things, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about it in a bit here, but also writing a terrific book coming out in October called Shocking Profit. Who doesn't want that? Again, an ethical, sustainable profit that is also shockingly great. I mean, awesome. So I'm really, really glad to have you here on the show, Tim. Thank you for being here, and it's always lovely to see you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so my pleasure.
Delighted to have you here. Tell us a little bit about what you do at ProAction Group.
Thank you. You mentioned the book. It's a good way to explain it. Shocking Profit, 7 Secrets to Growing and Keeping Top Leaders. It's discovering the value that's already there in your company, but it's hidden, and how to turn around even the best companies for ethical and shocking profit.
Well, again, who doesn't want that? That's pretty fabulous. I love that. Yeah, exactly. I've seen what you can do in a company, and we try to bring you in as much as possible for every company that we touch, because you can do really magical things people almost can't believe. One of my favorites is a project that you did with a company that was a fish packing company, yes. I believe. Can you tell me that story? Because that is how I explain one of the many things you guys do to other people. Would you tell me what happened in that one? It's interesting.
I love it. So this fish packing company landed Sam's and Costco in the same quarter, doubled their business. And, you have 10 minutes of celebration, and then in minute 11, it's like, oh boy, now we have to deliver. And they got to the point where they were running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and were 40% short of what they needed to fill their orders. So They didn't have time to build a new plant. They were a couple of months away from potentially losing one or both customers. And we got a chance to take a tour, and this will tell you a lot about the quality of their people. Such a great team. The lady who was the plant manager, she worked there her entire career. That's what she knew. No outside, exposure, no other company experience. So it really follows that they were doing what they always did. And as we took a tour, our original goal was to see if we could fit enough equipment in their factory to get the output. As we did our tour, we realized we didn't have to do any new equipment, that they could get the 40% with no new equipment. One of the stories that's fun about it is there's 2 that'll paint a picture. The first was we came to the machine that it's like an electric eye on a conveyor belt with a knife, and it portions the salmon. As the salmon goes through on the conveyor belt, it portions it. And so it's always 4 ounces. It's always 4 ounces. And we asked her if this machine is a bottleneck. Is it part of the problem? She's like, yeah, this doesn't go fast enough. And we asked her, is it a single speed machine or multi-speed? She's like, no, it's multi-speed. It's a really good machine. What speed do you run it at? And you could see the blood start draining from her face. She says, we run it at medium. And here's what told us she's going to be a great client. That weekend, she brought a supervisor in, and they tested it on fast. They turned it up to 11, and
like spinal exactly. Tap. It's got 11. Let's use 11. Yeah. Really.
So, yes. And the other one that's fun to talk about is there's another machine that would place the fish fillet in a little bit of plastic with the marinade and then seal it to send it into the freezer tunnel. So it frees it for shipping and to the store. And the machine that was doing this packaging, we were watching it work, and it was working fine. And we also noticed that half the conveyor belt going into the freezer was empty. And we noticed a similar machine sitting in the corner. And we said, Patty, tell us about this other machine. She goes, oh, yeah, that's the old machine. We got a new one that's faster. That's the old one. We keep it for a backup. And again, she tested it over. We asked the big question then, well, how about if we just run both all the time? And if one goes down, you still have one running. So you still have the backup. And here was the big question. The big concern was, if the freezer is freezing the mass going through it, if you double the mass, will it still freeze it? So over a weekend, my colleague Greg and her set up an experiment where they run it. And so Monday morning comes, he's so anxious to find out, eager to find out, did it work or not? He calls up Patty and he goes, did it work? And she's quiet. And Greg, total sweetheart, goes, now, Patty, that's okay. We'll try something else. There'll be something else that works. She goes, it worked.
Greg's amazing. I always love him. He's so great. What a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
He was all nervous all weekend long, and it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
And she's like,
what was the outcome of all of that then?
So the outcome
what were they able to do?
After that, we were able to talk to the CEO and told her, we don't need the study. Give us 8 weeks. We'll get the output. And Patty and her team went through a lot of these. Those were 2 examples of counterintuitive changes or things that just were outside of their experience. They had never tried it before. And 8 weeks later, we had the 40%, all the backlog was cleaned up. And they went from a 7 to a 5-day work week.
Bravo.
Sarah,
bravo. I can't imagine. In such a short time.
I mentioned 2 things because they're so visually, strong and illustrative, but there were 15 things like that to help us get there. And it was the reason Patty was like, it worked, was because she realized we always had the opportunity to do this. We always had the capacity, but we just didn't know.
That's your whole premise of Shocking Profit, is there is hidden profitability in your business, whether it's productivity, whether it's money you're leaving on the table. There is shocking profit. There is hidden profit in every business. You've never come across a business that didn't have hidden profit that was often very shocking amounts of profit that were sitting right there, that didn't involve laying anybody off, that didn't involve hiring more people half the time, or building a whole new factory, which would have been either not feasible or not cost effective. So that makes a huge
dependent
difference
on Sam's and Costco, which is very, very troubling.
That's dangerous too. So you were looking at the whole, profitability from every possible angle. And again, like you say in your book title, which is wonderful, wonderful book. I've had a chance to read some of the early galleys of it. It is really great. And I know people will love reading it as soon as it comes out. But that's a big part of that premise in there, is that there's so much that we're all leaving on the table without realizing it. And I think it's kind of that, I don't see a forest, I just see a bunch of trees. We're all looking at things every day that we don't realize might be areas of profitability.
And, Sarah, as we think about it too, we just talked about finding the hidden value, realizing there was the potential, the capacity was already there. It was also very stressful and difficult. And think about this, the company had been around for 50 years. And the way that Patty ran the plant was how she was taught to run the plant. Why didn't they ever run it on fast? Because, the portioning machine, because they never had to. And they got to a place where they assumed it worked at medium. And it's the number one thing when we get to go and meet a company and tour and talk to their people. And when we ask somebody, tell us a little bit more about the current, what you do today and why do you do it this way? Do you know what the number one answer is? It's how I was taught. That's how they've always done it. And people are spending their day filling orders, serving the customer. They don't get to step back and, put up a whiteboard and say, if we get to start over, what would we do different? It's not part of their job. They're not being asked to do it. Their CEOs aren't giving them that responsibility or authority even. So it makes sense. And what I love about the discovery piece is that it tees up an opportunity. So in this company, Lynn was the CEO. And when we shared all this with her, one of the things we talked about was that she can't participate. At first she's like, what are you talking about? I said, look, if you get involved and drive the solution, the fixes, then you'll need to be driving the solution and fixes all the time. What we're going to, we have essentially a burning platform, right? We have to make the changes, and we get to use this need to introduce ways for your team to learn to problem solve, learn to implement and design solutions on their own. And once they realize they can do it, it's a new muscle. They're going to get better, stronger, and guess what they'll do then? They will then develop the next set of leaders. This is how you grow and develop your own leaders. It's using the shocking realization of the potential that's already there in your company to set up improvement projects that are led by people who are developing their own team.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that. And I think it is so tempting to want to jump in and do things for people. However, in the long run, you aren't developing your leaders that way. And so, yeah, trust your people they're smart people. You hired them for a reason. Let them learn the things you already know, and they may know things you don't know, and let them really develop into leaders. But then they don't say, the next generation of leaders below them, they aren't saying, well, this was just how I was taught. What they were taught was to always be looking for improvements, to always be looking for things that are better. I think that's marvelous. Well, what other kinds of things have you done to find shocking profit within a company? I happen to love the Jed Clampett analogy. Feel free to share. I think that's lovely.
It's so wonderful.
You have to watch the TV shows from the 60s.
Yes.
Maybe not necessarily in the 60s, but you have to at least seen them on at some point.
I don't know what it says about me that I haven't run into many people that haven't seen the show or know what I'm talking about. So the crowd I'm running into, the Beverly Hillbillies.
Beverly Hillbillies. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And I love this because if you watch the show, Jed was a happy man. He felt like he was a rich man. He had a farm in the Ozarks. He had, a cabin, no plumbing, no electricity, but he lived with Granny, his daughter, and his nephew. And he spent his day finding food for the family. They would sit around and talk. They would make food. They would do their chores together. They had a joyful, wonderful life. And then one day he's out hunting and accidentally finds out that his farmland is not farmland. It's an oil field with a farm on top of it. That land went from being worth hundreds of dollars to hundreds of millions overnight. But how much of the oil did Jed add? None. It was all already there. And that's the shocking profit concept here, that so many people today talk about value creation. Forget value creation, at least for a while. Let's talk about claiming the value you've already created. That is the guttural, visceral part about this, is that the fish company was already perfectly capable to fill all the demand they had. They just needed to discover it. They needed to shoot the bullet into the ground and find the oil, even if it was accidental.
Sometimes those are the best discoveries. Yeah. I love that analogy. I think we do have a tendency, I notice in consulting a lot, I see people who are like, well, I need to get my business out there, or I need to get more things in my business, more value creation. Let's create more value. And I think you're right. I think maybe you're connected to a lot of places that you need to be connected already. And I think you already have maybe tons of value in there that you just aren't accessing or optimizing. And that's what makes your company so fascinating. It took me a while to comprehend just how many things you could do in terms of finding that hidden value and finding that shocking profit. And the fact that you're doing it in that ethical, sustainable way, not in a short term, we just want the next quarter to be great or make our shareholders happy or whatever, but that long term being good to people and making a sustainable company. And that's what I've always admired about you, because it's, anybody can find a way to yank some profit out of something for a quarter or even maybe a year. But that long term, how are we going to, what's in there that could be of real true value to the customers? So I always applaud you for that. Where
Well,
did all that come from? Where did all that come from?
uh, from making, I got to stand on shoulders of great people like Doug, you mentioned, learning, just constant learning, and being able to work through and go work in so many companies, 1,000, maybe 2,000 companies, and learning a few things. One of them was cost cutting isn't the solution. You do not cost cut your way to success. And it's sort of, I also think about this, Sarah, like happiness. You don't chase happiness. If you go directly after happiness, you don't get it. You might get some thrills or some immediate pleasures, but how do you become happy? Serving other people. If you serve people, you're going to be happy. It ends up, it's an outcome. The same thing's true mostly, with profitability. We don't become more profitable by cost cutting directly. However, when we go in and align the company so that people have the resources, the direction, the tool, the training, and understanding of where they're heading, every solution for the many different types of hidden value that we find, it has never once led to a reduction in force. We have never done that, and it's not because not because we're against it. Like if we walked into a company and they just truly had the wrong people and or they had way too many people, that we wouldn't be against doing it. It's just that it's never relevant when we go in and add the pieces that make a process and develop the throughput and the velocity and all the things that lead to higher performance. It does require things like accountability. Like we have a process and we follow it. And you know what? There are people that just don't like that. And that's okay. They leave. Yeah. So there's
that can happen. That could happen. Yeah. And they may no longer be right for the company if they don't want to grow. And you do, then obviously we're on two different paths and they should be redirected. Their career should be redirected to another company.
Exactly.
Give me the top 3 things that every organization should be looking at if they want to find shocking profit.
Yes. The first one is, I'm going to call it workarounds. It's looking for things in your company where somebody has to get involved personally to finish serving the customer, to finish the process. You have a ERP system, but you use Excel to do your scheduling, or we worked in a bakery once, an industrial bakery, where the recipes, their bill of materials weren't precisely accurate, but people on the shop floor, they're bakers. They knew how to make the product. So they would say, oh, it says to use this much flour and this much sugar. They're like, yeah, that's off. They would fix it because they knew what to do. That was a workaround. That company ended up having some dramatic growth, and it almost killed them because they had to onboard new people, and it was impossible for them to learn. They could not learn to bake that fast. That business required people to know how to run the line to run the line. Workarounds is deadly, and it's also amazingly accepted. We just did a tour of a company last week. Wonderful people. And I will say this, that their best people spend most of their time expediting orders. In other words, they walk it through the system. They have to physically walk it through and coordinate so that every department's doing what they need to do so they can serve the customer. It makes everything takes longer. The costs go up dramatically. Everybody's frustrated. Nothing flows. It's constant interruptions, constant frustration. So if the first sign to look for is, do people have to use manual human judgment to process a normal order, to serve a customer? If that's happening, that is a sign that there is oil under your farmland that you're not.
You don't have a today. You're not tapping into. So that would be one thing. Okay. What about the two or three others? One or two others. Yeah.
Another one is this is mostly more true for manufacturing and distribution companies, but how you work with suppliers is also another major area. So we just talked about process, which affects the speed or velocity with which you can serve a customer. That is a major impact on your total cost structure and profitability. Another one is the cost of the purchased goods and materials. So how do we work with our supplier? And I'll tell you another fun story on this one. We did a sourcing review for a company, and we were going through all their big commodities, and we were going to do a competitive bid in the market to, see if one is a current supplier, the one that's best suited to serve them, or is there a better deal out there, better fit? Well, one of the areas was freight, and it was $1 million spend. And for that company, that was a big deal. And the CEO said, "You know what, Tim, you don't need to worry about that one." I'm like, "Oh, interesting. Why is that?" He goes, "Well, my neighbor, he owns the freight company, and my son, our kids are in each other's wedding. Like, there's no way." And I said, "Look, just let us go through the process. You don't have to change anything. We're just going to collect information here." So we go through the process. We collect information from them, a bid or a quote from them, as well as some other freight companies. What we found was that another freight company could do the same work for $800,000, $200,000 less, 20% less. And it's so funny the way that CEO talked about it with his buddy. He said, "Joe, I love you, but I am not writing you a check for $200,000 a year." And at the end of the day, Joe, the owner of the freight company, was able to tell him, "Look, this other company, they're a national company. They've got a different infrastructure. I just can't compete with their cost structure." So it made sense, but it also highlights why it's great to test the market. Companies, we talked already that it's easy for people to get used to how they've been taught and how they've done things for years. Same thing's true with suppliers. You've been working with a supplier for 10 years, 15 years. It's like, we can't even imagine working with someone else. But then when you test the market, you either demonstrate that they're the right fit and you can go all in, or that there's someone else who should be your supplier.
Especially if you're trying to grow more nationwide or something like that, then as much as you love your friend, if they're more local and you're now growing in a different direction, it may no longer be a fit. You can be friends and say, we've appreciated you doing this all these years, and 200,000 is a lot. And also, again, nationwide has a benefit to that company, it sounds
Absolutely.
like. I am so incredibly honored to have you as a part of the Inspiring Victory tribe at the Inspiring Victory Show. Please do us a favor. We really need your help. Please like, subscribe, share, write a comment. It makes a huge difference with how many people we can reach here at the Inspiring Victory Show, and it makes a big difference to me personally. I want to make sure that we're providing content to as many people as we possibly can so they can grow and succeed. So we'd love to have you continue your membership here at the Inspiring Victory Show. It's free. Helping us out costs nothing, but it makes a huge difference in how many people we can help. So double your business, double your impact, and change the world. And thank you so much for being a part of this extraordinary community. Thank you. All right. So what's the third thing that we should be looking out for if we want to find shocking profit? The, Jed Clampett example of getting more oil out of our field. How do we do that?
I'm going to share one more story that kind of pulls it together. And this one actually is my sister. My sister, Karen, she founded a company called Drapery Street in Indianapolis. And it was about 5 years ago. We were talking, and she was working so hard. She was part of every sale. She was also part of installation, the crew, overseeing how the crew would install in the field. And she was exhausted. And she's like, I'm going to look for a buyer because this is just too much. So she worked with a succession planning coach, and she started developing processes that are followed by all. She hired a sales coach to teach her team how to sell. She shared with me last summer, just exactly 1 year ago today, she's now part of 10% of sales. She's now part of any installs. And they have processes that their team has developed and are teaching to their group every week. And what my sister shared with me a year ago was her company is now her hobby.
She freed up that much of her time
Yes.
where she doesn't have to be in the day-to-day anymore. It can run without her, more or less. Yeah. Wow. So if that's something somebody wants, that's huge. And people think it's not attainable, but it obviously is. Your sister Karen's a great example. She's always so lovely. Wow. Yes. Smart gal. She listened to you. Said, yeah. Even your sister listens to you. I can't believe it. Those are usually the hardest ones. Families are usually the hardest ones to convince, but she knows how smart you are. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
It's been a joy. It's been a joy.
Well, I know you love what you do, and you're great at it. What about, we have a lot of people who watch the show that have service-based businesses. You and I both do as well. What are the shocking profit, the hidden profit areas that we need to be looking for within a service-based company? Because I bet there's lots. And asking for a friend, not that we're perfect. But no, I think it is. There's always something to learn, and you are so smart.
It is, not to overuse the word, but it is shocking to consider this. What I'm about to share with you, Sarah, we use some manufacturing examples, and that's really easy to see. Like, you can literally watch product flowing down a line, and when it gets built up or there's machines that aren't working, you can see that it's not right? But when it's a service company, how do you watch somebody engineer or develop a quote or document customer calls or work a service order and know if it's efficient or if the velocity is there? And I can share a similar story very quickly. That it was a company that helps their customers get certified with the FDA, or to pass, to get their products certified so it can be sold on the market. And going through and looking at the processes that people used for developing quotes, for project management, for engineering, and understanding what they were doing, we tripled the business that any one rep could handle. Tripled.
Wow.
Yes. So it's still true. It's less obvious because you can't walk through an office and say, yeah, this is efficient. You have right. to, it's like my favorite, I love saying this, but get curious. Go to where the work is being done. Sit down and ask your team, like, let's just walk through an order. I just want to understand it. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, sometimes we work with private equity firms when they buy a company. The first thing that we suggest they do is have the CEO do a mapping, walk through the process from order to delivery, finishing the customer service. What they learn is going to be mind-blowing.
Mm. Wow.
One funny thing that happens on this is sort of a running joke in the consulting world, but one of the things we enjoy doing is we start by talking to the CEO and the VPs, and we ask them how the process works. And then we go to the people actually doing the process and walk through it with them in they're two different worlds every single time. They have no
nothing
idea.
to do with each other. Nothing in common whatsoever. No idea.
So get curious. People, like, one of the things I love about this too, Sarah, is the more I do this, it's beautiful what people are doing. Like, when they run into an obstacle, they don't stop and say, well, I can't do this. They say, how can I get this done? I'm going to serve the customer. I've got to make sure they get taken care of. So they figure out a way. It's a workaround. They figure it out because they care. And one of the things that we see, the companies they serve the customer, but their processes are weak. It's because their people are superheroes every single day. They wake up thinking about that customer, and that's the only reason that company is surviving and thriving. And when we get to come in and, imagine someone's, a firefighter, and they're using buckets and a garden hose, and then you give them, well, here's an actual fire truck with the full big pressure hose. They're like, this is wonderful, right? They love it. We're going to serve the customer, and it makes life better.
That is beautiful. I know you do a lot of professional speaking, and I love watching you speak, as you know. And one of the stories that you share has to do with your mom and
yes.
the wisdom that you gained from her, that is life wisdom. And I think sometimes we like to hear business wisdom that is also life wisdom. Would you feel comfortable sharing that story with us?
Yeah, of course. And so my mom, and she was about 68 years old, found out that she had cancer. And I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her at that point in my life. And it was fascinating and lovely to see her reaction to it. That at first, it was a shock. And she did everything that they asked her to do. She got the chemo, she did the treatment, she went to holistic doctors, but she also accepted it. She wasn't angry. She got over being sad. She probably was sad, but those last couple of years, the connections that we had, the time we had, that we got to just enjoy. Her last surgery, the doctors had told all of us, if we come back in 8 hours, that's good. If we come back in 45 minutes, it's because we couldn't do anything. And they came back in 45 minutes. And when my mom woke up, we had to share, we shared with her the news and said, Mom, they couldn't do anything. She's like, dang. So how are you guys? How's the food? She's right back about us and about the connections and the family, and accepting that the hard part of her life allowed her to turn it from something that was just pure agony and torture into something that brought everyone closer. And I remember it as a brutal joy, Sarah. I'm so grateful. And to tie it back into our conversation, when we find problems, when we find pain in a company, they've been suffering and dealing with it for a long time, but they didn't believe or accept that they could do something about it. My mom accepted that she could do something about her condition, and that was to do it in a classy, lovely, caring way. And it changed everything.
I love that she never lost her sense of her true purpose, which her true purpose was always her family. I know, having many conversations about your mom, that was her true purpose, and that was her North Star, was you guys. And
Yeah.
she never, ever lost that. So that even though she was physically suffering, she was mentally suffering, she knew the family was suffering, that is what kept her going until the very last moment. And that's where you get that from. So
I
that's
do
a
have to
beautiful
share.
story. Thank you. Thank you
Can
for
I share
sharing
one
that with
more
us.
part before we wrap that
Feel
up?
free. Feel free. Yeah, I love your stories.
So this just continues that how you can have joy even in a crazily bad situation. We were in the hospital. My mom and I talked, and she decided it's time to go to hospice. And even though hospice was 2 blocks away, they had a paramedic come and they took her in an ambulance. And the paramedic was a strapping young man. I've shown you the picture.
I've
And
seen the photo of that
yeah,
guy.
and it's
I forgot
awesome.
about this part. Yeah.
Yeah. So he wheels her
He's
into the
handsome.
room and he picks her up. But when he picks her up, he's got one hand behind her back and her other hand, so it literally looks like they're ballroom dancing. And I've got a picture, they're both laughing. My mom's laughing in this, and it just, that picture tells so much about how she handled that hard part of her life.
Yeah, never let go of her values, never let go of her family, never let go of her purpose. And I think that that is the real moral of all of this for us as business owners, no matter what we are doing, and as human beings, just never let go of your purpose and be there for the people that you love and who love you. And I adore you, as you know, and it was really lovely getting to talk to you. Any one last sentence of advice you would have for an up and coming you, somebody that wants to be
Yes.
you when they grow up?
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the curious. Get curious. Curious, not judgmental. If you can let go of the shoulds and should nots and truly recognize 99% of people want to do good, they're doing the best that they can. So get curious, find out more what's going on, what is going on. That's the start. No undiscovered problems don't get solved. Get
Wow.
curious.
Get curious and find them and then solve them. And again, stay connected to that noble purpose that we have when we start businesses, and hopefully continue, all of us, and within every company. Well, you are wonderful. I adore you, and thank you for being on the show. You are great. And I love your stories. Thank you. It's always great. I can't wait to see you speak on a stage again. It's always the best part of my year. So thank you very much. And again, for you watching, if you want to reach out to Tim Van Mieghem and ProAction Group, of course, there'll be lots of information in the show notes. And also, again, remember, double your business, double your impact, and change the world. Thank you for being a part of the tribe. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Sarah.